So we're shifting now from some of the most exciting things that are going on in the US to some of the most interesting things that I think are going on here in Germany. And I thought I would open with asking each of you, just to mention briefly, what is your own educational career, like how your degree history, and how did that influence what it is that you are doing today, whether positively, negatively, or in whatever way? Udo, do you want to go ahead and start?
Thanks, Melissa. So I'm an engineer by training, so I studied electrical and computer engineering at TU Munich. I continued as a visiting researcher at Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in computer science. I did speech recognition systems 20 years ago. I mean, they're now into many systems that consumers use, but back then it was a kind of new thing. And after that, I felt I did lots of deep dive, but I want to know more about it. I want to know more about innovation entrepreneurship, so I had to train myself a little bit about this. So I took some executive education at American business schools, Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, with executive programs to get what we call also T-shaped education, so deep dive and a technical basis, but then the horizontal education in innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership to complement this. And I think this is very important. I'm very happy that I went through this track, and we try to bring this to new students as well.
Through your organization that you're
right.
Right.
Okay.
Tom, how about you?
I started educating myself when I was 12 to do software development. And that's basically also what really made me who I am. So I am a strong self-learner, I have always been. When I turned 19, I was looking for something to study. But since I was already doing so much of software development in my free time, I weren't attracted by computer science studies since they seemed super theoretical to me. And so I studied business instead at a private school. Which was okay, but to be honest,
was that here in Germany, the private school?
It was here in Germany,
okay.
Yes, at Cologne Business School. But it didn't change much for me actually, because I think what I used in entrepreneurship doesn't have much to do with business studies as they traditionally are. So for me, it was mostly a self-learning journey.
Okay, and why don't we use that a little bit into a segue to talk about the university now that you have founded, because I know that self-learning plays a big role in that. Can you just give us a little bit of history of your journey, how you got to the point where you are, that you founded the university that just started up, I believe, last year? This is your second incoming class?
No, it's actually 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, okay, so it's brand new, the first incoming class.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the reason why it's also so much about this autodidactical approach is because I'm trying to build a university I would have loved to study at myself. And I made the observation that whenever I learn something on my own, I typically start with interest in a certain topic, with the motivation to really do something with it, and then dig deeper over time. So basically, practice first, theory second, or theory in the context of this practice. And when I look at most academic programs, and sadly also school, I realized that it's mostly the other way around. It's like first theory, 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 and then at some point you're allowed to apply it. And I think that's not natural. And I think that for some people it might be the right choice, but for many people that are more autodidactical, like me, that's not the most effective way to learn, because after writing the test about the knowledge you acquired in your lectures, at least I forgot all of it.
Udo, does theory play a role in the courses that you run at EIT? And do you agree that theory should take a back seat to more practical approach?
I agree that this could be an approach, but it's not the whole story. I think, Tom, you said it also, there are different kinds of people, actually, and so there are different kinds of approaches for good education. I personally like the theory-based approach, because I like to have the big picture first and then get into details, so a deductive approach, whereas a self-trained approach is more inductive, coming from bottom up. And depends a little bit what you want to do and what your own approach is. I think in many things that I needed to do in my career, the deductive approach was very good, because you cannot predict the future very well. So if you come from exams and try to generalize only from examples, then it's very hard when a completely new problem comes to solve it. So if you have a broader theory above it, for me it's a better approach. I also teach this, although I think that lots of practical coursework is necessary for this. So we have lots of practical things in the complementary way. So there's definitely some bottom-up approaches also that we teach.
Okay.
I think it totally depends on the field. Yeah? I mean, I really like the chart that the previous speaker put on the wall, differentiating between science and art, and craft sort of in the middle. And I think that there are different fields that require different approaches. And the thing is that so far, we do software engineering and digital product development at our university. And so far, this area has been treated as a very scientific one. Like computer science is a lot about theory, typically. And software engineering, though, is typically like being confused, being the same as computer science, and it isn't. And that's basically what we want to change. We think that in these times where software grows more and more complex, and there is more and more groundwork done, and more layers. Like, for example, most software engineers are not going to reinvent an operating system, a database, or some cryptographic algorithms. But instead, they need the ability to build products out of these technologies. And so both disciplines, computer science and software engineering, for example, are still relevant, and both require different approaches.
Mm-hmm. Do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that. Well, I teach at universities that also where PhDs are trained, and we also have a doctoral school. And I think I like to combine teaching with research a lot. I mean, that's a paradigm that was exported, I think, even by Germany some centuries ago, even to the Anglo-American system.
Absolutely, and I think a
right.
lot of countries now are looking at Germany with that approach and figuring, because we've lost it certainly in the United States, and it's like, how do we get back into that?
And I try to combine it. So I think a good education needs good research at the same time. So personally, I would miss this if this would be well, not the case. However, I fully understand that both schools should exist. So I completely agree that this is necessary. But probably you're not building PhD students or educating PhD students, but rather people who have really hands-on experience. And I think they're very good people that come out of this approach. So I completely agree. Another point that I want to make is that something we have been losing here in Germany or in Europe a little bit, and we try to overcome it, is that we need engineers as leaders in the future. That's my personal conviction. So. The engineering schools and the computer science schools, they don't teach innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership as well as they should. And the big success stories that came here out of Germany, economic miracle after the Second World War and those things, are companies that have been founded by engineers or by people with technical expertise. However, if you look at the big companies today, the DAX listed companies, there are very few engineers or technologists in the board, actually. It's because I think engineers and computer scientists are not really trained for this thinking, innovation, entrepreneurship thinking. So schools like MIT did it better in the past, and we try to do the same. So MIT is also a place of excellence for engineering, mainly, but at the same time, innovation, entrepreneurship is put into the brains of the people, so their mindset is enriched by this. And I think there's one more point, maybe I will make it short,
no,
that it's very hard to have deep technological understanding, and it's easier to learn this innovation entrepreneurship later on, or will have a mindset extension, then vice versa, going to business schools and then try to learn coding or try to learn technology, I don't know, in 2 weeks boot camps or something like this. I think it's very hard to do it this way. This is why I think high-tech countries, like many countries in Europe, for example Germany, should focus more on this T-shaped approach.
By that you mean making sure that there's the deep dive in the technology,
Yes.
but at the same time the
Yes.
breadth of
Yes,
understanding
exactly.
leadership. Tom, you wanted to add something?
I totally agree that we need more technical founders in Germany. At the same time, I've rarely met founders who said that they learned entrepreneurship by sitting in classes. So I think especially for the entrepreneurship part, we need to find other forms because most entrepreneurs learn on the job, so to say.
How long is a degree program at Code University?
We have a bachelor degree program, 3 years typically. It can be longer or shorter depending on how fast you progress. Yeah.
Okay, and then it's just the bachelor program. You don't have any.
Right now it's a bachelor
this
program.
point.
As I said,
Right,
we started
we're just
3 weeks ago. We're like totally newly founded independent university, a state-recognized university here in Berlin. So I specifically chose to not become part of something existing, something big, because I'm an entrepreneur for so many years now. I really believe in the bottom-up approach and like starting independently and on your own and really make it entrepreneurial. And that's what we did, but that also means that we need some time to catch up, to build more programs and stuff like that.
And just yesterday, Udo and I, we were talking about the importance of the community, as Tom just said. And in this case, for your case, it certainly means a campus. And I know with Code, you've decided to place it at the factory. I wonder if each of you could talk about, in terms of that community, what role do you think that plays? When there's so much available online now, why is it important to have that space? And what role does that space play in the educational systems that you're working on?
It's very important. Some voices said that traditional universities could be overcome by MOOCs or by online learning and all of this. And I think we embrace also MOOCs very successfully. However, it's a complementary thing to the campus experience. I think it's one of the most important things to be a part of a community. And I don't see any alternative to a physical experience together on a campus. We call it co-location centers, actually, where we encourage people to meet. Actually, we have one here on the campus of TU Berlin, which is specifically a co-location center for innovation and entrepreneurship cases, where we bring people students from other universities in Europe. And also Ken Moss spoke there once. I think it's the predecessor of Bill Orlett. So where we set up this co-location center in the international way. And I think students take away more the campus life and the social experiences from their student life more than even the theory, although theory is important whatsoever, but I think this community is the most important thing that you get during your student's life.
Sort of the counterbalance to theory is having this interaction.
Yes. But be also with intelligent people, I mean, likewise-minded people, and then, get feedback and improve yourself. So it cannot be any community, it should be a selected community for a specific topic.
I personally believe that community is the most important thing about education, because that's like how it was for me as well. I always learned the most from peers, from people who were like more or less at my age or specifically at my knowledge, perhaps like a bit more ahead. Than learning from people that were much more far away from me. And so what we really try is to bring like-minded people together, like Udo said, and I also think that this is a weakness of most big anonymous universities, that they don't encourage this whole community thing
Don't
enough.
foster sort of an environment where people are mixing. Can you talk a little bit about Factory? I don't know, is everyone aware of Factory here in Berlin? It's sort of a co-working and founders space?
Yeah, Factory is one of the big community spaces here in Berlin. They're just opening a new, huge 14,000 square meters building in Berlin, and we're part of this new building and the whole factory community, which means for us that we are not isolated as a university. We don't isolate the students within our own building, but we integrate in a community space, and that means that our students can already also meet with other founders, creatives, freelancers when being on campus. And it also makes a lot of sense because like as a university we need a lot of social and community space anyway. Like it shouldn't just be seminar rooms, but it should be like nice, cozy, creative places to hang out at, and that's the stuff that the factory believes in too.
You need dedicated students, though, to make sure that they're still working and not just hanging out in your cozy spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I always say we define the learning goals, but how they get there is pretty much up to them. So, yeah.
Which is quite radical for the German approach to education.
Oh,
wouldn't you say?
It's the more traditional German approach. It's actually much closer to what Humboldt originally had in mind than what happened in the last years. So many, I mean, by far not all, but many universities, many schools became more guided with a more like less free approach for the students, and we try to reverse that and put more responsibility but also more trust in the students to be able to educate themselves and to choose their own learning journey.
Okay. And certainly at Factory you have this ability to mix industry as well, but I was wondering, Udo, could you talk a little bit, what role do you think industry should be playing in education, and how are you cooperating or working together with industry to help keep that level of apprenticeship or interaction alive at the university level?
Right. So our approach is actually a so-called university-industry collaboration. So we have lots of collaboration with industry. Industry plays a big role for providing use cases and real-life problems to educate around them, create case studies, give topics for design thinking workshops and things like this. So this is a very important thing. And the industry also plays part in education in our approach as well, because I mentioned also not only innovation entrepreneurship is necessary for technical people, but also leadership, because we want to have also C-level engineers in the future more than we have now. And we have a program where 10 industry companies have opened their own leadership executive programs for very good PhD students of technical domains. So we call it Software Campus, where this leadership training is coming from industry, not from the university.
So you have sort of peers that are actually...
It's a blended approach, I would say.
Blended approach. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it relates a lot to what you said. Innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership cannot be really trained by theory. I mean, computer science and engineering theory plays a bigger role. So here, a hands-on experience, personal coaching, personal interaction with role models plays an important role, and we want to bring this also to engineering schools.
We just heard a lot about teaching entrepreneurship. I know it was something that's mentioned just in the invitation that you received here. I'm wondering, in each of your schools, in each of your approaches, how do you approach teaching of entrepreneurship? Do you have a clear-cut program like what Tom just presented from MIT, or is it just discussed? How do you approach that topic?
It's like for us, it's incorporated in everything we do and in the whole study experience. I mean, I think the whole approach we're taking to education is very entrepreneurial in itself, and that we put so much more trust and responsibility in the students than other programs. And also, they're always working in interdisciplinary teams. So we have these study programs, software engineering, interaction design, and product management. And they always work in a team together and need to coordinate a lot. And that's also a big part of entrepreneurship. And finally, they're doing lots of pitches, lots of presentations, stuff like that. We try to like really bring a lot of entrepreneurs to the community. Actually, like we were funded by 24 of the most successful German internet entrepreneurs, and they're regularly visiting. We can bring them to conferences like DLD, which is great. So some of them are here today as well. I think it's something where the environment, the community, and the constant exposure to entrepreneurship. And by the way, we are a university startup, so like whoever studies at our university right now can see live how
they're participating actively in a startup
is created. Yeah.
That's great. How about
Yeah, EIT Digital is in a great way a virtual institute because we have partner universities and partner industry members, university-industry collaboration, and so the universities provide this technical major education, technical major degrees in computer science or engineering, whereas we as EIT, we provide the innovation entrepreneurship minor on top of this, and we, because we're working together with 20 universities in 9 countries in Europe, we have a master program where students can enroll at one university and go the second year to the other university and get the same, the harmonized curricula at both universities, including our innovation entrepreneurship minor degree, which is the same in those 20 universities. And then practically, I mean, I just mentioned it, it's a mixture of theory and hands-on, but lots of hands-on. So we have a class called Business Development Lab where no student should leave actually the master school without having the own innovation project that is, well, should potentially be market ready. Not all of them are, but we really want to get close to that.
But one of the elements that we were just hearing about is the willingness to fail and the ability to fail. Having kids who are coming up, of my own, who are coming up through the German elementary and now high school system, to me, as an American, the ability to fail and the willingness to put yourself out there seems to be something that is missing in the primary education and the upper secondary education system in Germany. Do you experience this at all with your students? Do you feel that the students that you're getting out of high schools here with Abitur or from other countries, are they able to really take on some of these challenges of being the pirate, of going against the stream, or is that also something you really have to teach them at that higher level?
I mean, many people talk about this phenomenon that, specifically in Germany, people failing is a big malus, is a bad thing, and in the US it's much better. I would, because it has been talked about for so long, I don't want to pitch into the same thing. So actually, I think failing also in the US is not really necessarily better than succeeding. You know, we've seen people who succeed better than whatsoever, and people who have failed. I mean, they really have to learn lessons out of their failure, and I think this is the key point. So it's not like we should encourage everyone to fail, but if you fail, you should not fail. The goal should not be to fail, but don't be, well, take the risk. Maybe risk taking is a big thing.
Maybe risk taking is the better.
And if you fail, then please learn out of it. Take your lessons learned and don't feel bad about it. And maybe also the HR departments of hiring companies or whatsoever, they are aware that a good communicated failure is also a good thing. And I think in Germany it's pretty much the same. Of course, our culture is a little bit like, you know, you should spell everything correctly. You should, I don't know, it starts very early when I came to the US, I was very amazed that I was feeling bad about the spelling mistakes I made in English, and I was asking my colleagues, how do you spell correctly? I don't know either, which was funny because it was his mother tongue.
I had my English grammar corrected by Germans when I arrived here.
But I mean, I think I wouldn't overrate this too much, actually.
Like
What
our motto is actually learning is productive failing, and we select students in our whole admission process so that they really share this idea. So it is true that in Germany it's much more rare to find people who think like this. At the same time, I agree with Udo that sometimes I think we Germans we act as if failing would be a great thing in the US. I mean, it's still not a great thing to fail in the US as well, but it's slightly.
We're experiencing this right now, yes.
But yeah, so I think we have the big advantage that we are allowed to select students, which, by the way, is also for many state universities in Germany is very hard. So they have to like find the biggest common ground for all the students they get, and we can select the ones that really have the same values as we have and that really fit to our program and approach.
How big is a class at Code?
We have
an incoming class.
So we have 88 students right now, and we selected them out of 2,000 applicants.
Okay, and are they all from Germany, or do you have international or even
20% are not from Germany right now, and I'm really sure that this number will increase. We have fully English language, like everything is in English. There isn't any German on campus. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure that we will soon have 50% internationals.
And I know you mentioned that you had some with EIT, you have some programs where you're collaborating elsewhere in Europe. Is there somewhere else in Europe where you would say that you believe they are really getting this right and are able to teach some of these deep dive and leadership skills, T-learning that you were talking about?
So great thing about EIT was to exchange best practice with all of the other places. And we have partners in Stockholm, well, Scandinavia, Finland, Stockholm, Helsinki, Stockholm, the Netherlands. We have activities in London and in Paris. And so we could get practice from everywhere. And people also pick some good things from Germany. So we see this exchange of practice is a very important thing. And we have improved a lot over the last 5 years. I think Scandinavia is doing many things very correctly. I mean, they're more playful in many things than we are, so we learn from them. However, maybe they learn this disciplined entrepreneurship from us a little bit, as we've seen that even in the US
As we've
it's
seen,
cherished.
we need both. Yes, it's got to
So-
be a collaboration of both.
And I think this is a major point for Europe. I mean, everybody says Europe is united, or probably not anymore, but half a year ago everybody said it's
In
a single
theory.
market, and but it's very fragmented. We have different languages, different cultures, different currencies, different laws, or whatsoever. And if a good guy from Finland has a good idea, his home market is too small for survival. And what we help through our approach is to bring those good ideas, for example, to Germany, where the market is much bigger. And so we really help with our network to overcome a typical European problem. Same with the culture, that's what you said. We exchange best practice from all of those countries and well, take the best out of all of those worlds. And I think our approach will eventually lead to a Germany that's more competitive in
And how big is your student body? How many?
How many?
Yes.
Well, in the master school we have around 300 per year in those 20 places, actually. The most sought after places are Berlin and Stockholm, actually. So in Stockholm we usually have, in Berlin we usually have more than 100 out of this group. And last year there was one German out of them, so it's very highly international.
That is international.
And this time it was 3 or 4, but it's highly international.
Okay. I'm watching our clock tick down here. We're running low on time, but there's so much to discuss. I was wondering, in closing, if each of you could just sort of sum up by saying, what do you see as, in the future going ahead, the most important lessons? Sounds really small, but the element, what do you want to make sure that your students go away with? And if there's a student out there or somebody who's thinking of studying, what do you really look for? What is the most important element that you think they need coming into your universities, into these two schools, in order to be successful in the future?
Mm-hmm. I can begin with like what we think they should come out with. So we consistently try to give them the ability to learn by themselves, on their own, to learn how to learn. And we think that mostly happens through practice. So, I mean, it's in the end, it's just, if it's a bachelor or a master's program, it's typically 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years is such a tiny time span of our lives, and technology will develop even faster, and so we really need to educate people that are able to adopt in the future as well, and that's our most important job. The whole the stuff we're actually teaching them, like the content, is much less important than this ability.
Okay. And a key element that an incoming student just must have, in your view?
They should be taking responsibility for themselves, for their own learning journey, of course curiosity, and I think, yeah, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, actually.
Okay. How about EIT?
A big thing that I want to make, my point is, we need more technical entrepreneurs with really deep dive knowledge about technology. So we will have new technologies coming up, so we will continue to have a technology push, actually. And to really understand those technologies requires really a deep dive, really a multi-annual education in engineering and computer science. Yesterday, the keynote of Stefan Wilmers, I agreed, I enjoyed it, but not in all of the points. For example, when he said those 5 giants from the US, I mean Facebook, Google, Apple, you name it, they taking over, I mean, the whole of the economy, 3 trillion of market capitalization, and how small our economy is here. a full stop. In a different context, he advised students not to study engineering because in the future AI will solve all of the engineering problems.
all of it, right?
I completely disagree. Engineers will be the ones who build those AI systems, and it's probably easier by AI to replace managers than AI systems or building such systems of future technologies. So I think what we really need is people with lots of technical expertise, but with an innovation entrepreneurship mindset, and this was not taught here. So a person from my generation who would specifically want to make a career but had the analytical skills for a computer science program chose business school because he got leadership training there and the mindset to become a leader. And I think we need this mindset implanted into the technical curricula. This is our point.
Very good. All right. Well, we are now out of time. I thank you both very much, and I think it's really exciting what you are doing, and I'm always very fascinated by Germany's ability to actually, you know, kind of watch somewhere else what's going on and then just quietly develop it. And I see both of these programs coming out as like real future sort of leaders in entrepreneurial and innovation technology education. So thank you. And thanks to all of you for your attention and your listening.